What is up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, the QQQ, and many tickers out there. I'm going to break down what's going on with the economic calendar moving forward and why tomorrow is going to be an absolutely insane day. But just note that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. And also, if you guys can, please check out my Moomoo link. If you deposit $100, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks. If you deposit $2,000, you're guaranteed 30 in total, not to mention 8.1% APY in uninvested cash. The offer ends at the end of March, so check it out before they run out. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the markets. So as a reminder, the market got this big sell-off yesterday because of the news about DeepSeek, which developed their own version of ChatGPT and other AI models. One of the models ended up costing under $6 million, according to their reports. But we can't really verify those numbers to say if it's truly legit. Despite that, that should not take away the credit and the innovation that came from this model and the Chinese team. So they did a good job there. But you also have to remember that they didn't really build everything from scratch. They still reused American models to do that, right? We're looking at like Llama from Meta and then these other open source AI models as well. But despite that, this led to some fears, a lot of fear in the market about how the US's dominance was at question at developing AI and more questions about the extent of how many chips would be needed by companies like Nvda. So the market got this huge sell-off yesterday. We were talking about this yesterday. We saw Nvidia dump quite a bit. It was down almost 17%. And I told you all, hey, the market is dumping, but to me, it looked like big tech was getting bought back up, and I was anticipating a bounce. I said I want to see as long as Nvidia could hold 117 to 120, we should be looking for a rebound. And that's what my prediction was. I did tell you that if SPY could get back above 602, we're looking for an attempt to fill this gap. And then the QQQ also has potential to push towards the EMAs in the 520s. That's exactly what happened. The market got this nice little rebound. So far, the market's off to a very strong start. But the question remains, what's going to be the next big factor and why on earth should we be very careful despite the fact the market's trying to push? So there's another big factor, and that's going to be the big guy, Jerome Powell, who's coming out tomorrow. He's going to be a make or break for the markets. Looking at the way we moved, we saw health, technology, and finance in the red, whereas tech saw a nice comeback exactly as we predicted. But whether or not this continues depends on this big factor here. So there's two main factors. Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, January 29th, 2025 in America. At 2 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time, okay, we have the Fed interest rate hike decision. They're not going to give us a hike or a cut. They're most likely going to keep it the same at that 4.5% target rate. There's a 96.8% chance the Fed is going to keep rates the same and not really do anything, right? The market knows that. So once this announcement comes out, this could be decent for the markets. The market may even try to push a little bit upon this coming out because this is already fully priced in. But what's going to be a lot more impactful is going to be this right here. So 30 minutes after the decision comes out, we have the press conference, and that's when Jerome Powell starts giving his speech. Okay, so Jerome Powell is going to open his mouth. He's going to go on about the economy, what's happening with inflation and factors just like that. That's going to be very important for the markets. Now, Donald Trump, the president, he has come out and he said that he is demanding that the Fed is going to continue to cut rates. He's pressuring them to cut more. He thinks interest rates should be a lot lower. And the question is, will the Fed end up capitulating or not? My view is that the Fed will most likely not do that, but it's not just about like right now, it's also about the future. So will the Fed open up to the possibility of cutting rates a little bit more in 2025 than initially expected? We'll have to see about that. If they don't end up doing that, if they continue to maintain their like more hawkish stance about how we have to wait for the inflationary data, we have to wait and see what other factors give us. The market does not like ambiguity, and that could be a little bit more bearish for the markets. So we'll see about that. Will Jerome Powell remain optimistic about the markets? Will he imply that the Fed may cut a couple of times, maybe even a little bit more than initially expected for 2025? If that's the case, that's going to be very, very bullish. If Powell gives us the run up for the markets, that's going to be the factor that causes that. And if it's the opposite, if Jerome Powell is very, very ambiguous and he keeps on saying the same things about how, the Fed may not cut as much this year, inflation is still at a high level. If he keeps on, taking a different tone, that could also switch things, and that could cause a rug pull for the markets as well. So it could go either way. It all depends on what this guy ends up saying. So make sure you guys are ready for that. He is known as being the biggest market maker, and we'll see what he causes for tomorrow. On top of that, please know that we had a couple of earnings that came out. I went over all of these already. Boeing, unfortunately, did not do too well. We saw a big loss for the year 2024. Guidance was not the best, and then they have been talking about how they're waiting to release their new designs, so that's still taking a lot of time. So not the best for Boeing. GM did relatively well. They had good guidance for Q1 of 2025. That's where the share price is up. So decent earnings overall, but things get very serious tomorrow. In the morning, we have ASML and Progressive, and then after market close, after FOMC and everything is taken care of, we have big tech earnings. We have Tesla, Meta, Microsoft, and IBM all announcing their earnings. This will most definitely cause a lot of volatility, especially for Tesla. So get ready, guys, for a very, very big move thanks to tech. We're going to be listening to what they say about their AI developments and the future of their developments as well when it comes to new projects. Tesla is going to be looking to see what they tell us about their sales, their growth projections, and AI growth. If they keep on pumping AI news and catalysts, that could be very, very bullish. We'll see about that though, because I am noticing that a lot of these Wall Street investors are now talking about how they want to see Tesla unveil a new model. So we'll see if Tesla does that or not. As of right now, it does not look very probable. It looks like they're going to be focusing more on the robo-taxi. But we'll see, guys. Will Tesla give us a more affordable model or not? We'll just have to see. For now, guys, be very, very patient. So what is my view of the markets? What on earth is going on? Technically speaking, the market is bullish. Okay, it's straight up very, very bullish. The bulls are still in control. We're still in the bull markets. The bulls are winning. Okay, as of right now. So heading into FOMC tomorrow, we still have this gap to fill on SPY. And notice the last few months, we're continuing to make higher highs and higher lows. Yesterday, what happened was we dumped, but look at the blue trend line. This was resistance causing rejections. And then yesterday, we retested the trend line and we bounced that time. So that's a very, very good sign. We have this gap to fill. So I wouldn't be surprised if we try to continue this push. I think there's a very, very good chance that this ends up trying to push even more. I think that as long as we could try to hold above this resistance, SPY is going to likely try to attempt to fill this gap to about 607. So the odds favor us maybe kind of dipping here, consolidating a little bit, then eventually trying to break past resistance. If 605 breaks, we're going to be looking for an attempt to get back up to about 607. If we can't break past, and if we end up losing 602, we're looking for a dip back down to like 598. So it could go either way, but I'm favoring this is going to try to push to fill this gap. That looks a bit more probable, and that's the most likely possibility. Then we have Jerome Powell's speech. So let me just correct this a little bit. We might get a little bit of consolidation like this. And then when Jerome Powell gives his speech, we'll see, does Jerome Powell cause this to launch to new all-time highs? If SPY breaks 610 after Jerome Powell's speech, I think we go up to about 615 plus. If Jerome Powell causes the rug pull and we reject off this like 608 to 610 area, this is a tough resistance. We rejected off 608 many times. Then we'll see if we get a big rug pull back down towards like the 590s or below. So I anticipate that we're going to consolidate, maybe push a little bit more, and then we'll see, does Jerome Powell cause us to pump higher to new all-time highs to the 615s, or do we get a rug pull back down to the 590s? Could go either way, guys, depending on what the big guy says. So anticipate a little bit more upside, and then we'll see what happens after that. For the QQQ, we look a bit more bullish. As long as we could hold above like 520, I think we're looking quite good. If we lose 520, we could be tipping back down towards this like 515 area. So it could go either way. If we break past resistance at this 522 zone, I think we may continue to try to uptrend for like the 525s or above. That's like the more bullish case. And I think there's a good chance that we try to at least push approaching Jerome Powell's speech. We might see a little push like this. But here's the thing about this. Even though tech is trying to pump, Jerome Powell is going to be the next big factor. Will he launch this market higher to try to fill this gap and continue to run like this? Or is Jerome Powell about to cause a rug pull back down? We'll be watching for that for now. So my view is that the market may consolidate a bit tomorrow morning, and then there might be a little bit more upside coming to try to fill this gap. I think the QQQ is going to try to go for it, but whether or not we get a big bounce or a rug pull is also going to depend on big tech earnings and Jerome Powell's speech. He's the first factor to watch for, so we'll see if he gives us that rug pull. So for now, look for some consolidation around here. So long as we don't end up losing that like 518 area, we're going to be fine. And then we should be pushing a little bit higher, approaching FOMC. There should be a little bit more upside. Then we'll see if Jerome Powell gives us the rug pull or not. For the Russell 2000, okay, same thing is going on with this ETF. We're just consolidating. We're completely just range bound going back and forth like this. I think we just continue to do this tomorrow, and then Jerome Powell either launches this back to like 230, or we get that rug pull back down off the double top right here. There's like a double top here. This could be like a break of structure below our 50 EMA, taking us back down to this liquidity zone. So I'll be watching this very, very closely to see which way we break. Depends on what the big guy says. ES looks a bit more bullish, technically speaking. May see some consolidation like this, but then I'm favoring that we might try to come up to fill this gap back above 6,100 and eventually 6,125. There's a very good chance we try to do that, so we'll see about that. Will we get a rejection back down to about 6,050 or below, or do we start breaking past the much higher 6160s? So what I anticipate is consolidation, a small push, then Jerome Powell, he's either going to cause a rug pull back down to the very low 6,000s or below, or he causes a big rally back up to new all-time highs. That depends on what he says. I have to wait for that. But for now, the chart does look a bit more bullish, and we favor consolidation to push a little bit higher for the time being. For NQ, we look bullish, okay? We may continue to consolidate as well here. If we could hold above 21,560, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 21,800. That's like the most likely possibility. We try to push a little higher, approaching FOMC. Then Jerome Powell is going to launch this higher or lower, depending on what he ends up saying. So look for some consolidation, maybe an attempt to go a little higher. The Fed may be, the markets may like the fact the Fed is going to likely keep rates the same. It's already priced in, so this may try to continue to go. Then we'll be watching. Do we get that rug pull? Do we pump higher? It depends on what the big guy says. We're going to be waiting for that. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, so we have to wait. For Bitcoin, we're just completely range bound. I think tomorrow we push a little bit. We might be trying to retest this resistance around 102,800. Consolidate like this, then Jerome Powell may launch the markets, including Bitcoin, back up to 105,000, or we dump back down if we end up losing 100,000. So it may go either way, but that's what I'm seeing for now. Nvidia looks bullish, guys, because we dumped really hard, and now there's buyers who are buying the dips on this. This was like something that's meant to do. So I'll be watching that at least very, very closely. So that's going to be very, very key from the way things are essentially moving. So that's going to be very, very important. If we break this resistance around 132, we're going to be looking for an attempt to push back up to higher levels to try to fill this gap back up towards the 140 area. So that's like the more bullish case. The bearish case would be like we try to push a bit towards this resistance. If we don't fill the gap before FOMC, we'll see, does Jerome Powell launch this higher for us to push up here, or do we get the rug pull if we fail to break above like 140? It all depends, guys. But what I anticipate is this. I think Nvidia goes a little bit higher. I think that we're going to slowly push back up towards the 133 area like this. That's what I think is going to happen tomorrow. Can we break it to try to fill this gap? It depends. I don't know if we're gonna immediately fill the gap tomorrow morning or not. I think we push a little bit, but I'm not sure if we fill the gap yet. That depends on FOMC and earnings. If Powell launches us, then yes, I think we easily fill the gap back up. If not, we could be looking for a rug pull. But I think we'd come back up to this liquidity zone around the 133 area, and we'll see if Nvidia breaks out or not. So look for a little bit more upside on Nvidia. Then we'll see if we break out or not. So watch it very closely. On Tesla, we're completely range bound, going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. If we break past resistance around this 400 area, we're looking for 403 and then 408 as our targets. If we end up losing 390, we're looking for a dump back down to 384. So we'll see about that. We're completely stuck in the middle, so give it the time it needs. If we're bullish after Tesla's earnings, okay, if earnings come out and Tesla does very well, we want to see if this can break past 408. If that's the case, we could be breaking out into like the 420s. That's like the more bullish case. If we're bearish after earnings come out, you want to see Tesla essentially lose 384, this 200 EMA. If we fail that, I think we could be dipping to like the 370s or below. So there's going to be a big move coming. I don't know what the move is going to be, guys. It depends on earnings. How well does Tesla do with the earnings? I do not have insider information or anything like that, so I can't make promises. So the best thing to do is just wait and see. Be very, very patient on this one. For Aapl, we look bullish. I'm going to be watching to see, do we sell off a little bit right here? Could be a little dip coming. We could be retesting like 235, but even if as long as we hold like around the 232 to 235 area, this is like a left shoulder. This is our head, and this could be forming like a right shoulder to start pushing back up. So this is like an inverse head and shoulders that could be forming. So look for a small dip here. I think that it pumped so much, it's going to dip just a little bit. Then we'll be watching to see if we get a bounce and retest like 240, which I think is going to happen. So it might do something like this, and then we'll see, does Jerome Powell cause this rug pull, or does he cause this to like continue to pan out? It depends on what Jerome Powell says. I'm looking for a move like this, a little dip and a bounce, and then we'll see if the inverse head and shoulders pans out or not. So that being said, guys, I went over the majority of these. I took a lot of time into this. I'm going to now be very fast with the rest of these. So exactly as predicted, Netflix was completely flat. We're in a wedge. So there's going to be a big move coming depending on FOMC. Could go either way, in my opinion. If we're bullish, we're looking for a breakout towards the high 990s. If we're bearish, we want to see us lose 957. If that fails us, we're going to be dumping to about 937 or below. So we'll see, guys. The main support now is this previous resistance becoming support around 937. So we'll see if we break out to the upside or the downside. Could go either way. For MSTR, we're dipping a little bit, but what's very good about the chart is the fact that we have a nice inverse head and shoulders, and we're actually making higher lows, which is a good sign. So you can actually draw out like a trend line that kind of looks like this. we're still holding up technically. So we'll see. Tomorrow we might try to slowly ride this trend line higher, and we'll see, does Jerome Powell cause us to launch back up, or does he cause a rug pull? It depends on what the big guy says, so watch for that very, very closely. For Celsius, it's very flat. It's completely flat. It's like a pancake, not really doing much. If we lose 24.8, we're looking for a dump back down to the low 24s. If it breaks 25.5, we're looking for 26.3. We're going back and forth right here. We could try to push higher, but then I'm waiting to see what happens with our data and Jerome Powell. Supermicro looks a little bit weaker compared to Nvda. It still dipped a bit more. I did say yesterday I was expecting it to dip a little bit more. We're approaching our support. I'm going to be watching to see if we could hold 27.5 at the very least. If we could hold that, there might be a little rebound attempt tomorrow to get back up to about 29, which is what I'm going to be eyeing. But I think it's going to make a move like this where it kind of consolidates and it just trades sideways here. If we make a nice move thanks to Powell, we could be launching into like the low 30s. And if he gives us the rug pull, we could be dumping a lot more. But I do anticipate a little bounce here, so give it some time. For Palantir has a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure. We made a full recovery exactly as predicted. The share price is clearly bullish because we keep on getting bought back up. There's tough resistance in the 80 area. We might dip here before it tries to continue to bounce like this. But then we'll see, can we get back up to these highs up here around the 83 area? Jerome Powell is going to be the factor to affect this. So will Powell launch us to 83 plus, or do we get a big rug pull back down to 76, if not 74.6? Well, I'll be watching that just to be safe, so keep that in mind. For Rivian, we're on a bit of a downtrend, making lower highs right here. If we end up losing essentially this 12.4 area, we could be dumping back down to about 11.6. If we end up bouncing back up and we break past 12.9, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to about 13.4. It could go either way, so we'll see if we hold support to bounce here. So give this the time it needs as we're just trading sideways in a range like this. I think Rivian is just going to consolidate for some time as it's range bound until we see a big reaction. Rather pushing to the 13.5 area or below. SoFi got a big dump after earnings. It did try to come back only to consolidate. I did predict a green day. It was only somewhat in the green, not as green as what I was hoping for, but now we're range bound. So if you're bullish, you want to break 16.6. If that breaks, we're looking for this retest right here, 17.3. If we're bearish, you want to see this thing basically maybe push tomorrow, remain range bound, and eventually lose 15 flat thanks to Powell. If he causes that, we're dumping back down to the support over here. So that's going to be where we're going. It depends on what Jerome Powell says. Do we lose 15 to turn bearish, or do we break past 16.6? As of right now, we're just range bound trading sideways, so I'm not really seeing much. For AMD, we're looking so. We're trying to base here. So it's trying to form a base right over here around this 113 area. I really hope that it tries to base right here. If we form a base, this thing could attempt a rebound back up towards the 117 area. If we don't base here, this will be dipping lower. It's still kind of lackluster, so I think it might retest this support around the 113 zone. If it does not hold us, we could be tipping closer to like 110 before we see some kind of bounce. So it's a little bit lackluster. But if anything, I just want to say that despite this weakness that's on the share price, we'll be watching to see if support holds firstly. And then secondly, I'll be watching to see if Jerome Powell affects that. So I think the big factor is going to be big tech earnings and Jerome Powell. I'm hoping that if Nvidia bounces, this may also try to follow along and try to get that bounce right here if we base. So I'm hoping we get that base, but we'll see just to be safe. For ARM, we look a bit more bullish. If we break past 151, we're looking for 154. If we lose 143.5, we're going to be dipping lower, but I favor upside a little bit more for 151. Might try to push for that, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get depending on Powell. We're completely range bound on coin, going back and forth between these levels like this. If we're bullish, we need to break 289 to fill this gap. If we're bearish, you want to see it lose 274 to start dumping. We're completely stuck now, so give this the time it needs. For Amazon got a nice break. We hit 240 as our resistance, and we have 235 as our support. If we end up losing support right here, we have 235 as our main level. So if Jerome Powell causes a rug pull, you want to see it lose 235 and 233 to start dumping. If you're bullish, you want to break 240 to really start breaking out. So we're stuck in the middle right now. What's good about Amazon is we look bullish. So even if we do get some kind of dip, it is still favoring upside, because even when we dipped yesterday, we saw buyers defend it very nicely. So it's still technically favoring that it wants to push into the 240s. We'll see depending on Jerome Powell, though. So we're in a range right now. Whether we break up or down depends on Powell, but technically we look a bit more bullish. Meta's looking bullish, especially approaching its earnings. We have 680s resistance. If that breaks, we could be on our way closer to about 700 flat. If we end up losing 660, though, I'm looking for a dip back down to 649. So it could go either way, but as of right now, even with the dump yesterday, it just made a full recovery. It's still looking very, very bullish and wants to continue to do this. Now, it's going to likely push tomorrow, but If Jerome Powell gives us the rug pull, we could dump a little bit before earnings, or it could continue to go. It depends on what the big guy says. Hypothetically, anything could happen, but just know that right now it remains bullish. Microsoft is looking bullish approaching earnings. I think Microsoft announces earnings. Let me just double check that. Just to double check. Yep, Microsoft announces earnings tomorrow. I just want to double check that. If we break past 450, I'm looking for an attempt to get back up to 452 or above. If we end up losing support at 443, we're looking for a dump to 438. It looks very bullish. Looks like it wants to push into the 450s. We'll see depending on Powell. Google looks a bit more bullish. If you could break past 197, we're looking for an attempt to go to the 200s to fill this gap at 198, then go to 200. If we lose 194, we could be dipping, but I do favor upside a little bit more. So watch to see if that ends up being the case. For DJT, we're on a bit of a downtrend right here. If we break past 32, we're looking for an attempt to get back up to 34. For the VIX, we're dumping. We have a gap to fill down here. So if this continues to fall, we're going to be looking for that gap fill. That's going to be very, very key for the way we end up moving. That could favor upside for the markets. Then the 10-year and the dollar are going to make big moves depending on what Jerome Powell says. So in a nutshell, the market's bullish. Big tech are bullish for now. Okay, we may push a little bit higher tomorrow morning. Maybe after the decision comes out, we go a little higher. But whether or not we continue to pump is going to depend on what the big guy says. So will Jerome Powell pump us more? Will he give us a rug pull eventually? For now, we're pumping. For now, we're bullish. But then we'll see depending on what he says. Like I said before, I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what he's going to say. I wish I knew everything, but unfortunately, I don't. So we just have to be very patient traders on this one and let the price action do the talking. Thank you all for listening. Have a good rest of your day. I'll be back with another updates tomorrow morning. Until then, I wish you all the best and peace out.